Welcome, everyone, to episode 57 of the Thundercrafts podcast, where we forge through the shitstorm that was WCW Thunder. I am your host, subject to the silent Brian McNee clause, Josh Kaiser. And joining me today, a man fighting over Beulah McGillicuddy in grade school, Kyle Hogan.
What's going on, everybody? This is, I'm really excited about talking about this. I think we might have seen the death of the disciple, the reemergence of Ed Leslie, and also the death of Ed Leslie. How you doing?
It is quite a Thunder indeed. It's a big April Fool's joke today here in 1999 because we get Ed Leslie, the disciple, a.k.a. the Booty Man, a.k.a. Brutus the Barber Beefcake, a.k.a. the Zodiac, a.k.a. there's got to be some other things I'm forgetting right now. In our main
he was
event.
a warrior. Wasn't he like the one warrior and the other warrior in the One Warrior Nation?
He has had a lot of monikers, and unfortunately none of them involve being a good wrestler. But that said, we are here. It's Thunder 57. It is April 1999, and we are 10 days away from Spring Stampede, Kyle. It doesn't get much more exciting than that.
I mean, I can imagine some more exciting things, but I would think this was actually the first show that with everything that they were talking about, with very little, there was almost no recap. I know we're kind of going through this, but there's really not much to talk about with Nitro, but it made me want to watch the Nitro before, so I actually did watch the Nitro before this one, and there's been no other show where I've been like, what the fuck is going on with this Thunder? And I'm like, oh, I probably should watch Nitro. So, and it did actually explain a lot of things going on. It's actually a really, really tumultuous, I guess being nice about it, there's a lot of shit going on, and everything's being pulled in many different directions. But I've also learned that now that I've actually started watching Nitro, it almost feels like Nitro and Thunder are like two parallel universes where it's the same wrestlers, but you wouldn't know what the hell is going on Nitro or on Thunder and on Nitro. Like, it almost feels like there's like a smattering of similar storylines, but holy shit, there is so much more going on Nitro. It's not even funny.
Well, I believe that. That said, we're not here to talk Nitro. We're here to talk Thunder, Kyle, so let's just get into it because we are live from Richmond, Virginia, and Tony is letting us know that on this April Fool's Day, we're going to get 2 hours of Thunder plus some overtime. So he's already selling overtime.
He also says we're 10 days away from Spring Stampede 1998, which I thought that was a fun little guffaw for him to get the year wrong, but we'll let it go, Tony.
We will let it go, Tony. We do find out Sting was back. He's not just on the QVC channel, but he was in the rafters on Nitro. We also find out that we're going to hear from Sting this Monday on Nitro. So
you really thought he was going to be on Thunder to talk about stuff?
Hey,
you really thought that?
The first time he spoke in over a year was on Thunder, and it was terrible. So maybe they would bring him back for the same reason.
I guess, but he already said Mamacita on a pay-per-view, so it already was broken.
That is fair. That said, after this, we also find out that Hogan beat Diamond Dallas Page in a number one contenders match. So now
we don't know how or anything, but we just know he won.
We just know he won. So now we got Hogan and Flair for the world title, Kyle. I mean, that is a match once in a lifetime, right?
Right, only the third time in 3 pay-per-views or whatever the fuck's going on now.
And we also find out that as we head to the ring, Bobby Heenan's going to throw a pen at the camera, which was just random as hell.
Well, he threw a pen last week, and he threw it straight up in the air, and it hit Tenay in the shoulder. So I feel like him and pens just don't get along in the first 5 minutes of Thunder.
That said, we're going to go to the ring. We got Mean Gene. He's here, Kyle. So we got Mean Gene opening things up. It's got to be a good show when you got Mean Gene here. He's going to bring out Raven and Saturn. Raven and Saturn apparently are going to be in tag team competition at Spring Stampede. And it turns out that they're going to be wrestling Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko, of course, the former tag team champions, because Raven and Saturn interfered in their match, costing them the titles, now setting up a reason for them to feud.
But no. That's not true, because if you watch Nitro, they already had the match. It was already booked that it was Saturn and Raven versus the Four Horsemen for the tag titles. But they still put the titles on the line on like a random, like, hey, we'll just take on all comers. That's why Ray went to Kidman. And yes, they have their cruiserweight title match going on at Spring Stampede. But apparently they're also best buds. They're like, hey, why don't we tag up? And so, once again, let me repeat this. Raven and Saturn already have a booked match versus the Four Horsemen for the tag titles. And what did Raven and Saturn think was a good idea? They interfered in the tag match with Ray and Kidman, causing the Four Horsemen to lose the titles, but they're still going to fight the Four Horsemen at Stampede for a non-title match.
Oh boy, that is quite something.
That's a yikers. That's what we call yikers in this business.
That said, Gene's gonna discuss Raven and Saturn. He can't believe that they're friends again because, he thought they were enemies, that the flock has flew. And this is when Raven, of course, is going to say, we used to also fight over Beulah, and that's when Saturn says, no, that was Tommy. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge to all you ECW fans out there. He also calls Raven a goof here. And honestly, this segment was kind of unnecessary and felt weird. And I think you even said Raven looked like he phoned this whole thing in.
I mean, he didn't have the same. He seemed so nonchalant. He did not sound at all like Raven. You know what he did? He sounded like the Raven from the promos where he's always looking at the camera and being like, "Moms, right?" Like that's what he kind of was in this. So I just wasn't ready for that version of Raven where obviously he didn't have anything scripted for himself. He just went out there and being like, after Mean Gene's talking to them about, I thought you two would stop being together, and he's like, "What do you mean we're not together? Were we dating or something?" Like it was just kind of corny.
Yes.
It wasn't as good of a promo or poetic. And you know what? I'm actually going to take the late great Josh Haddox aside and say I'm not a big fan of Raven right now.
Oh, that is a brave choice. Also, Eric Bischoff, not a fan of Raven at this point either. So you're not alone there. After this, though, we do move to our opening bout. And we got the Thunder debut of Erik Watts, Kyle. So we get to see Erik Watts here doing his best Jeff or Matt Hardy impression as he came out rocking those, kind of Jenko pants and, the whole 9 yards here. He's going to be wrestling Norman Smiley. And we find out that Norman Smiley's Big Wiggle is a controversy on the level of Elvis Presley on the Ed Sullivan Show. Which is kind of true and kind of not. I mean, the last 3 times we've seen him on Thunder, when he's done the Big Wiggle, they've always done a really weird, awkward, pan to the crowd, which is, like I said, really unsettling and just off-putting. I would have rather just seen the Big Wiggle. But, yeah, I mean, I guess if they're going to compare it to anything, I guess they could go that far. But it's really not that big a deal. He's just... I don't know. There's worse things we've seen on the show, on the other shows, and yet they're picking Norman Smiley's, little fucking 4-second dance as being too hot for TV. It's just a little weird for me. We do, as for the match itself, we get, it's kind of interesting because I feel like they, the crowd is either, and you and I both thought this, they're either chanting boring or they're chanting for Norman here, so I don't know whether he's over or not, but I can understand if they're gonna chant boring, because I kind of thought that the match was not all that exciting. It's gonna involve mostly Norman Smiley teasing the Big Wiggle multiple times, and at one point you think he might in fact be executing the Big Wiggle, and that's when, to your point, the camera cuts away, shows this weird far away angle. But what they really should have cut away from is Erik Watts doing the finger guns as he continued to fake shoot Norman Smiley. That distraction of Erik Watts just not being able to really be, have his mind in the game is going to eventually be his downfall, as Norman is going to win with the Norman Conquest. I gave it 2 stars. I guess it was okay, but, we didn't even really get to see the Big Wiggle up close, which is all I really care about right now. And, that's about all I could say about this match.
See, I thought you were going to make some, some dig at me because I say how much I'd like the Big Wiggle, but now I'm glad that you and I are on the same page that we really wanted to see it. So, all right, cool. I gave this 2 stars, and I even put in my notes barely 2 stars. I liked the offense when it was actually picking up. I did. God, it's so weird to say. I did actually kind of like the offense that Erik Watts was doing. By the way, for those who don't know, that's Bill Watts' son. He was also kind of a decent player in TNA. He was in a stable with I think Curt Hennig and some other second generation wrestler that I can't think of off the top of my head. I think he won a title or 2 in TNA, but nothing obviously happened in WCW. Norman was mainly there for the entertainment, as it felt like he really didn't do all that much in the ring. Except for sell I almost said Bill Watts, Erik Watts' moves. I just feel like Norman is in this weird WCW purgatory where his presence in the ring being kind of like a showman is more important than him actually going out there and doing a good work. It's almost like kind of like to a lesser extent a Scott Steiner, who could probably get away with really not doing anything, but him just being there is enough for people to pay attention to the match. Obviously, a much smaller scope, but I think it's getting to that point now where Norman's over enough that he doesn't have to try to impress people with his wrestling skills. Instead, he's just kind of like a goofball.
Yes, and it's only going to get more goofy as time goes on, of course. After the match, we get Mike Tenay shilling the hotline, which seems to be making a common spot here on Thunder all of a sudden. They're really shooting, promoting the hotline. We then go to backstage, and it's J.J. Dillon's there. Chris Jericho's chatting with him. They're discussing the U.S. title tournament. Jericho, of course, was eliminated by Scott Steiner, but here he is saying that Curt Hennig got eliminated or is hurt and can't be in this tournament anymore, so he should replace him. J.J. Dillon's not buying it. Of course, Jericho is going to, do his normal Jericho shtick about making jokes about it and trying to find loopholes and all that. And JJ says you need to prove it in order to, get yourself back into the tournament.
The old classic silent Brian McNee clause.
We then move to our next match of the night. Mike Enos and Bobby Duncombe Jr., the hottest tag team in WCW these days. They're going to be wrestling Saturn and Raven. I have a problem with this. And it's not that he's wrestling, Saturn and Raven. But, why did we just have them come out, do an interview, leave, have a match, and then come out and have a match now with Saturn and Raven? Couldn't you just either cut the promo before or after their match, right back to back, instead of, dividing it up? For an awkward promo, they could have, just had it right when these guys were out here to begin with.
Or the other side of that would have been wait a little longer for them to actually have their match. I guess it just seems weird.
And that's fair, too, yeah.
Maybe somewhere in the middle or towards the end, or it's like or Mean Gene's got them in the back, or they're getting ready for their match. They do their little shtick, and then they come out. So that at least it's something that kind of sticks. Yeah, you're right. Now that we see kind of what the order of events are with this card, having Saturn and Raven doing a kind of, like I said, a half-assed kind of promo with Mean Gene, and then 10 minutes later they're just going to come out and have a match anyways. It feels like the answer should be continuity, or let them be on the show at the beginning, and then we'll wait a little later for them. We know they're on the show. We'll tease that they're tagging later, but it's not much of a tease if you're only just waiting 8 minutes for them.
Right? Yeah, you're waiting one Norman Smiley match in between your segments here.
You're waiting one Erik Watts match.
The match itself is pretty much what you're expecting here. It's Saturn and Raven are trying to look strong here before they have their tag match at Spring Stampede. You're going to get Saturn, throwing everybody to Suplex City. You're going to get Duncombe and Enos trying to cheat with the bull rope. But ultimately, that bull rope is going to backfire as Enos is actually going to accidentally hit Duncombe. And that's going to lead to an even flow. Of course, Saturn and Raven are your winners. I gave it 2 stars. It served the purpose they were trying to sell here of pushing Saturn and Raven. But, I think you actually enjoyed this match a lot more than I did.
I did, actually. Also, I feel bad that Bobby Duncombe Jr. went over, I think, last week on, I can't even remember who he beat, but we were surprised that he did win. But now here he is, just going back to his old hat. I gave this 2.5 stars, and I actually thought about giving this 2 3/4 because this was actually a decent tag match from like a in-ring psychology for a tag team for both teams. And I think I might have thought that because when I first saw this card, I'm like, this is going to be chaotic bullshit. Like, it's going to be one of those things where I'm going to bitch about who's the legal man and all that other stuff. It actually turned out that this was a rather flawless match as far as, the ref minding his P's and Q's. There were a lot of near falls, a lot of tag team breakups, quick tags, double teams. I thought maybe at the beginning this was going to be like 4 singles wrestlers just trying to exist in a tag match. But this actually felt like 2 tag teams that had decent chemistry with not only themselves, with their partner, but actually with the guys they were going up against. Like I said, this could have easily been a chaotic shit show, but this actually had structure. I was very surprised by that, and I think I graded a little bit higher. And also Mickey J not seeing someone use a chair on somebody. I mean, that's what else are you going to ask for? This is just classic Mickey J. So 2.5, and I think my pride kept it from doing a 2 3/4 because I think when you put I feel it's like a 2.5 with a Bobby Duncombe Jr. is really like a 3-star match. So I'm just going to stick at the 2.5.
And your Bobby Duncombe Jr. was Kenny Chaos 2 weeks ago, where he went.
Oh, that's right.
Chaos. So after this, Benoit and Malenko are going to come out. They're going to beat down on Saturn and Raven as they're pushing this feud between the two of them. Whoever's in charge of the bell
here.
The
face stable. The face stable, right?
Yeah, the face stable, right. And I'm not even convinced that they're a face stable anymore, to be honest. Between Flair and what we'll get into later, they may actually be the heels these days. But whoever is in charge of ringing the bell here to say, like, break this up, would not stop fucking ringing the goddamn bell. Oh my God, it just kept ringing and fucking ringing, and it was driving me insane. And
it almost felt like it was like bring someone to work. It was like bring your child to work. Hey, you get to work the bell today.
After this, we go backstage. It's J.J. Dillon. He's talking to Ric Flair in the locker room area. Jericho's going to tell Flair that he's looking dapper as he kind of sucks up to him, tells him he wants back in the U.S. title tournament. And Flair's going to ultimately grant him that wish because he says, you know what, he doesn't want him being a Hogan mark. He thinks he's a Flair mark, and Flair's going to be a nice guy to him.
And also, you can see this happening because Jericho. There's one thing I really do know about Jericho and WCW. He fucking hates J.J. Dillon. He's not taking anything that J.J. Dillon is going to tell him to heart. So he's going to try anything in his power to get one on over on old JoJo.
And old JoJo, that's right. We then get our Saturday night promo. We find out Booker T is going to be defending the television title. Jericho's going to be in action. Rick Steiner and Fit Finlay. I don't know if they're in a hardcore match or not, but we're finally going to get a little bit of heat from that feud that we saw developing a couple weeks ago on Thunder, Kyle. We get Jerry Flynn and Ming. They're apparently the hot tag team in WCW as well, wrestling the Barbarian and Hugh Morris. And
too little, too late. The tournament's over already.
And we find out that Raven and Saturn will also be in action. So a lot happening this Saturday night, but nothing as hot as our next match. As we got Chris Adams making a surprise amount of matches lately on here on Thunder, as he's going to be wrestling Chris Jericho. And Chris Jericho's going to come in. You actually mentioned, Kyle, he comes without Ralphus, so I know it's not the last of Ralphus, but it does seem like it's been a while since he might be getting rid of Ralphus as his lackey.
It could also just be that it's Richmond, Virginia, and they probably just maybe. I feel like with the way that Ralphus looks, maybe he's from the West Virginia area, and maybe he's just banned from that state because of a lot of warrants out for his arrest, and obviously all the debauchery he probably did in his youth.
Right. Of course, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Chris Adams, though, he's actually getting a surprising amount of offense, I feel like, in this match.
Dude, he beat the shit out of Jericho.
Including hitting his super kick. Unfortunately, he was on the outside when he did it, but he brought him back in, does a huge top rope crossbody. It's only going to get a 2 count. Eventually, of course, Jericho is going to win with the line tamer. I gave it 2 1/4 stars. Like I said, I was surprised by the amount of offense Chris Adams got, but I think this was the best match I've seen. I saw tonight.
I also gave it 2.25. Match was fine, but I feel like it really was Adams shouldering a lot of the load, as we said. I think Jericho may have done like 3 moves and a lot of crowd work, but basically just let Chris Adams look good, and then ultimately gets the Lion Tamer in. So yeah, medium level selling, gets the Lion Tamer, gets the win. I wish there was a little bit more back and forth, but it is what it is. But I do say that you gotta give Chris Adams a lot of credit. If he was given the opportunity that Jericho said, "Hey man, I'm gonna let you take care of this match," he did a good job doing it.
After the match, we get Ric Flair. He's in the back talking to the Disciple, or Ed, as he's referring to him as Ed Leslie. He says in 30 days, Ed Leslie's contract with WCW is going to expire. Ask him, what he'll do to get a contract renewal. Ed basically says anything. They discuss Hogan and how Hogan, was the man, and Ric Flair specifies, was, no longer is the man, and says, they talk about how Hogan and Ed Leslie, kind of came up together in the ranks. And ultimately says, I will give you a 3-year contract to double the money you currently have if you're able to beat Hogan tonight. And Kyle, so there it is, the Disciple and Hollywood Hogan in a main event with Ed Leslie's future in WCW on the line. Doesn't get much better than that, right?
I'm rooting for Hogan.
Sorry, everybody.
Sorry, Ed's wife and beautiful daughter.
We then cut to our next match. It's Ming and Jerry Flynn in tag team action, or at least it's supposed to be. Ming's coming out, Jerry Flynn nowhere to be seen. And that's when we cut to the back and we see that the Barbarian and Hugh Morris are beating the shit out of Jerry Flynn, spiking him in the back. And Ming's going to go check on him, but he is too late, and it looks like we've got a handicap match here as Ming is going to still wrestle Hugh Morris in the Barbarian. And we also find out Jerry Flynn's hot streak, the only blemish on his hot streak as of late, was a loss to Ming, so he decided to team up with him. I don't know about you, but I feel like Jerry Flynn's hot streak may be a little bit bloated here.
I mean, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking the whole entire time of, what the fuck are you doing, Ming, coming down the ring, not knowing that your tag partner's getting his shit kicked in the back. Like, he's like walking down thinking like, oh, Jerry Flynn's right next to me, obviously. Like, that's kind of what got to me. You know what, Jerry Flynn, we've been giving him a lot of shit, and we keep talking about how, we have a hard time just kind of believing in this, like, what the fuck kind of push is this? Like, it's like almost just like, I don't know. It's Jerry Flynn's a really weird and random, like, throw a dart at the dartboard of who's going to get a couple wins, together, and we get to talk about how they're on a hot streak. And Jerry Flynn was, where the dart went to. It's just it's hard to believe. Yeah, he's been winning. He's not going to beat Ming. I'll say this right now: if I was watching wrestling in '99 and Jerry Flynn beat Ming, I'm never watching WCW anymore. Like, there's nothing else. I can't. The whole point of wrestling is to almost like get yourself lost in the theatrics and and sometimes just the silliness of it all. But that's not silly. That's just completely unbelievable. And so, no, Jerry Flynn, you're supposed to lose.
As for this match, it is a handicap match. Ming is going to definitely hold his own, including a big chop fest at one point before we go to commercial. Commentary is going to spend a lot of time discussing Sting and the color of face paint he has, and how he's a different wrestler with different face paint. Heenan's going to discuss that the referee is young, but he comes from a rich family because he's saying he's the Boone's Farm winery. We get eventually Ming is going to get back body dropped into a power bomb. Top rope elbow drop. You think it's got to be completely done at this point. But out comes Jerry Flynn stumbling from the back. So everyone's excited. The return of Jerry Flynn. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that, right? Him returning heroically into this match that we didn't care about to begin with. But he's here. He's going to super kick Hugh off the apron. Ming's going to lock on the Tongan death grip. And boom, there's your winner. Whew. I gave it a star and 3/4 because, honestly, this is a storyline that they built out of nowhere. These 4 people are supposed to be wrestling again on Saturday night, and now Ming basically held his own against both of them tonight. What the fuck's the point of watching them on Saturday night?
That's true. Before I give my rating, there's an unwritten rule that I made up. But I feel like it's still something.
So it's an unwritten rule that only you've come with. All right.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Hear me out, though. Hear me out there. When somebody is getting attacked in the back, there are so many ways you can do it, right? You can just beat the guy up, hit him with a couple of items in the back, maybe put him through a table even. Bum rush him and just kind of just beat him up a bit. That's all you need to do. If you spike pile drive a man on the cement, he's not wrestling. That's like the universal symbol of take the day off Jerry Flynn. And yet the man is on such a hot streak and getting so much of I'm going to call it a mega push. No man should get up from a spiked pile driver on the cement floor to come back to do anything, let alone, take a little dirt nap for 10 minutes and then come out just kind of holding your neck and doing one kick. I'm sorry, that made me angry. I actually got mad he came out because of the fact that he took such a beating, a specific beating. It's one thing about getting his ass kicked. He got pile driven. This is something that retired Paul Orndorff, if you don't remember correctly, from the Four Horsemen, okay? Jerry Flynn just shrugged that off in 10 minutes. Now to my rating.
But when Paul Orndorff got pile drive, was he on a hot streak that was only blemished by a loss to Ming?
Dude, Paul Orndorff at the time was just reinventing himself, remember, as Mr. Wonderful. Like he was coming back as that and was winning a couple matches. But before that all happened.
Only loss against Ming? I don't think so.
And also, did he have to fight Goldberg twice because Goldberg had something to prove?
That's true.
Anyways, I gave this 2 stars. I see what they were trying to do. And if it was another combination of higher tier wrestlers with the same storyline, I would have been okay with it.
Yeah,
but not Jerry Flynn and Ming versus Barbarian Hugh Morris. This did not deserve almost 13 minutes. I appreciate the effort. I think it told a good story. The match was very believable the way they wanted to tell it. But basically, like you said before, what's the point in watching Saturday Night when Ming single-handedly beat both guys with a small assist from Flynn at the very end? Plus, it just doesn't make any sense. So Flynn didn't even need to show up if it came down to the point where he didn't really need him to begin with. So, yeah, it's a weird way to script it.
It gets even weirder because after the match we get a Ming promo, which is going to be a lot of Tonga death grips, and they slow down the voices to make almost like it sound like demonic as they're talking about Ming. I gotta say, I didn't expect to see a Ming video package here in 1999.
I think they're just trying to. I think once again, I think they're also trying to build him up.
I mean, I guess, but I feel like every time they try to build Ming up, they immediately squash him in some match. It doesn't matter, and then they have to go back to like trying to build him up again. After this, Mean Gene's here with Hollywood Hogan, and out comes Hogan, and he starts kind of cutting a babyface promo here as he's talking about the NWOites and the Wolfpack being on his side, and how Ric Flair is basically playing the heel here, setting out all these hoops for him to jump through in order to try to win the world title, and this is going to bring out Ric Flair, who's going to cut the same promo Flair's been cutting lately, where he tells everyone he's going to take their wives home and make a woman out of them, and calls everyone fat boy. And then he's going to bring out Ed Leslie, which Gene thinks is an absolute low blow that he's going to pull such a dastardly stunt as bringing out Hogan's friend. That we find out that the future of the Disciple rides on tonight's matchup. Flair then says tonight about 1,000 times as Hogan's trying to get some words in edgewise. He says he'll fight the Disciple right now. Flair's going to then try to kick out a bunch of fans from the crowd, and we find out that we're going to have to wait tonight. And that's our segment here. Is we're kind of setting up for the Hogan Ed Leslie matchup that everybody wanted.
I liked Bischoff more when he was not Ric Flair.
Yes.
That's why did we replace Eric Bischoff with just Ric Flair acting like Eric Bischoff, but as WCW? Like it's almost just like he's the antithesis of the NWO, which now the NWO is like totally like tame. Like there's a couple of douchebags in the group, but they're not like before. It used to be kind of like almost like guerrilla gang warfare. And then now that that's calmed down, now we've got Flair just this huge overcorrection. of now WCW is now in charge, and now but now it's like the Four Horsemen are like the lackeys, and he's just like the ultimate power with nobody else, even near him. It's just, I don't know. I get it, but it's such an overcorrection.
Yeah, it's really awkward here. But after this, we can move on to our next match. More tag team action is Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit, accompanied to the ring by Arn Anderson, are going to be wrestling Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Kaz Glacier Hayashi. The match is actually kind of fun, back and forth, but what was really most interesting about this entire match is commentary, because Tony Schiavone and Tenay kind of get into it over who has more stroke at TNT, and Schiavone basically tells Tenay he can make him, he could get him fired off of TBS, meaning basically setting up Heenan to play a mediator here. And then Schiavone does a fucking hilarious Larry Zbyszko impression. I was dying. Thoroughly enjoyed it. As for the match, I kind of enjoyed it as well. We do get, of course, Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit are gonna win. As Malenko's gonna hit the double underhook Tiger Bomb into a Texas Cloverleaf. It was a little bit short for a match, but I thought it was enjoyable for what it was, and the commentary team I found thoroughly enjoyable as well.
Yeah, I gave it 2.25 stars as well. Maybe I didn't like the bickering as much. Man, this was a fast match, though. This was like maybe 4.5 minutes long. And I was okay with it, but it was to the point where if they were doing it the entire match, it'd be one thing if they bickered for 4 minutes and the match was 6 or 7 minutes. But I mean, from beginning to end, they were just incessant on their bickering. Which, like I said, we talked about it last week. When they get into it, when they become part of the entertainment, everybody wins. But it was basically the entire match. So I felt it actually kind of took a little bit away from the match because I was kind of distracted by what they were doing. Because there was a while where I kind of had them in my, kind of like in the background. But then after a while, you couldn't ignore them anymore. And so now I'm concentrating on what they're talking about because it's enough that they're like yelling at each other. And I'm like, okay, apparently I need to listen to them or pay attention because this is somewhat important. And then I find out it's really not. There's bickering, and Brain of all people is like being the voice of reason.
That is the craziest part about it.
Yeah, once again, I'm not taking away from the entertainment factor of it. It was fine. I just wish that it wasn't the entire match.
No, that's fair. After the match, of course, Saturn and Raven are going to come out. They're going to give a beatdown on Malenko and Benoit. They're going to bring out a table from underneath the ring. They're going to set Benoit on it. And Saturn's going to go off the top rope to the outside through the table. Well, kind of. The table's not going to break. But him and Benoit, the damage is done. We then go to the backstage promo, which is probably pre-taped from Nitro. I'm assuming it might even be a replay. And it's Hogan. He's there with basically the B Squad, Black and White NWO. He's talking to them about that whole deal where he told all of them they were leaders and says, Stevie Ray's in there. He's pissed off. He says, leave Booker T alone. That was one of the deals. If I joined the NWO, you leave my brother alone. But Hogan says, things are changed. We're your brothers now.
He basically pulled the I've altered the deal pre I don't alter it any further.
Exactly. Nash is excused. He as Hogan discusses about the whole leader deal, says it was a test and he made a mistake. Says you're all qualified. And apparently at Spring Stampede, Kyle, we're going to get a battle royal to decide who is the leader of the NWO Black and White.
Oh, I thought it was Nitro. I thought it was the very next Nitro.
Oh, is it Nitro? I thought it was Spring Stampede.
I mean, you would think it would be something as monumental as the leadership of the B team, but I'm pretty sure he said Nitro. We can keep moving forward. I'll look at what the card is. I won't tell you the whole card, but I'll confirm if whether or not that's on there. I don't think it is. I'm looking at it right now. No, it is not. So yeah, I think it's Nitro.
Thing. Okay, well, that's even better. We can see what the results are next week on Thunder. We then get someone from the NWO Squad, Horace, in action against DDP. It's good to see DDP back on Thunder. What it wasn't good to see is DDP in a long match with Horace on Thunder. We cut to commercial. DDP is dominating. he comes back. He was dominating a little bit more, but then Horace is going to get, in his little Hogan splash here. We then get Tony Schiavone calling for the Diamond Cutter before it actually happens. But then DDP is going to execute the Diamond Cutter. Felt a little sloppy to me. Not just the Diamond Cutter, but the match in general. I give it a star and 3/4. I thought it was too long for a match where Horace should have been squashed to DDP. And it wasn't just... They didn't feel like there was much chemistry there between the two of them.
In the summer of 1998, these two wrestled. I think it was right after DDP lost the U.S. title when Horace got introduced, and he beat him in 40 seconds. So to have it now being not even a year later, we have a 10-minute match that could have easily gone for 4, and I still would have probably thought it was too long. I also gave it a star and 3/4. Some not so fantastic spots. There were a couple head scratchers. It was basically just both of them just clotheslining each other and then just ramming each other into railings on the outside. It really wasn't. It felt more like a brawl, and I didn't even care that it was a brawl.
Pretty much. That's going to bring us to our main event. This is why we're all here tonight. This is why people tuned into TBS back on April 1st, 1999, because we got Ed Leslie playing for a 3-year career extension and the entire world behind Hollywood Hogan at this point. The match itself, though, I guess it was all right for a little bit there. It was about. You
would think it should be something good. They're best friends. They came up together. You would think that they would have some form of chemistry. So if it was a bad match, I would think God, who can you have a good match with? If you're like Hogan or Leslie,
right? Hogan's gonna hit the big boot, but he's going to get tripped up by Flair, who's going to be out there. This is going to lead to the Apocalypse. Oh my God, is Leslie going to win? Nope, because Hogan is totally no-selling the Apocalypse. Flair cannot believe it. He's going to come in after Hogan drops the leg drop to get the DQ finish. Then Hogan's going to no-sell the attack by Flair. We're going to see classic Flair and classic Hogan at this point as they kind of... Flair's playing the, chicken shit heel. Hogan's playing the Hulk Hogan, basically, at this point. Arn Anderson, Malenko, and Benoit are going to come in. They're going to beat down Hogan here. Ultimately, Hogan's going to get free from that as well. Flair's not happy as him and the Horsemen kind of storm out of there. I gave the match 2 stars. A lot happened here. The match itself was okay-ish. But solid storytelling here between them. And when you've got, Ed Leslie in a main event, all you can hope for is that the match is okay and that you get decent storytelling, right?
I agree. Also gave it 2 stars, mainly because I'd like this match a little bit better than the Horace DDP match, which we both gave stars and 3/4 on. Also because for the sake that it was shorter. And there was more to follow. So Hogan was wrestling like a wrestler again, which is a rarity sometimes. But we were talking about how when he was wrestling Kurt, he was putting him in a cross arm breaker. He was going for a small package. He was doing arm dragon twists. Like what the hell is this Hogan that we're watching that I've never seen before? We kind of did a little bit with Ed Leslie, which once again makes sense. They've known each other forever. I'm sure they know how to have a match with each other. In a way that probably they remember back when they were a little bit more able-bodied than them being in their mid to late 40s at this point. But I'm wondering if Flair cost Disciple the match. Did we just see the end of the Disciple, and did we see it on Thunder? Who's to say that? I don't know who said it. Probably you. That we never get to see any real gripping and earth-shattering things that happen on Thunder. We might saw the retirement of the Disciple.
We may have. I have to fact check that because I just can't believe that's how such a glorious career would end. But who knows? After this, though, their show's not over, Kyle. Surprisingly, we go back to commentary at this point.
We're not out of time, and yet he said that we're probably going to go into overtime, which usually means it's going to abruptly end.
Right.
But here we are. We're back at the commentary booth.
Back at the commentary booth. They're going to discuss what just happened, but they're mostly going to be hyping Sting and the big announcement that's going to come from him on Monday We got to tune in to Nitro to find out what that message will be. And then we're going to cut to a promo. It's really heavily Crow influenced, a lot of rain, Sting standing there with a little graphic over the bottom that says Sting's message will come this Monday. So really got a lot here. And that is how we end our Thunder. What did you think about this April Fool's Day 1999 Thunder 57?
So first of all, with the Sting promo, the reason why I felt like it was very Crow-centric is because it was a promo from 1997 that they reused and just put a graphic at the bottom of it. So
solid.
Just fucking lazy work there. The show itself, what was up with all the tag matches? Like we had more tag matches on this after a tag tournament, which I felt weird to even notice. Right. But overall, I mean, I thought the match quality was pretty decent. I think you and I kind of floated around the 2 and 2 1/4. So I don't think there was any match where you and I both thought, wow, what a dud or what a piece of shit. So I guess we can give it that. There were plenty of matches, which is kind of, once again, I don't know if they keep changing the format of the show, where when a show is taped, it's usually heavy wrestling with some recap. And then when it's live, it's usually more promos, which there were promos. Don't get me wrong. There was some things in the back, and Mean Gene was there. But there was a lot of wrestling involved here, too. We got a lot of fun fourth wall stuff with the whole Beulah McGillicuddy, Tommy Dreamer jokes there. We got to see the son of Bill Watts. So that was the thing.
That is the thing.
And I feel like we got a little bit of everything. Only thing I felt was missing was the Wrath match of the night, but other than that, I felt it started out okay, maybe to a point, maybe a little weird, and it ended with a main event with Hollywood Hogan. So, I mean, for my taste, I would say that this would probably trend on the more positive than the negative.
I think I would agree with you on that one. It felt like a different Thunder. I don't think match quality was great by any means. They were okay at times, but nothing was terrible. I will say, if this was a go-home show for Spring Stampede, I would have loved it. And I say that because Hogan and Flair world title match is your Spring Stampede main event. Very rarely, if ever, do we get a Thunder that closes out pushing that main event at the upcoming pay-per-view. Here you are, you've got Hogan, you've got Flair. Hogan's wrestling, somebody that Flair put in front of him. The two of them have cut promos all night. It ends with a beatdown. Hogan one-upping Flair, Flair one-upping Hogan. The Horsemen are getting involved. And here we are, closeout. Boom, we're ready to go to Spring Stampede. I can't wait to see Flair and Hogan get after it. Unfortunately, we got a pre-taped show in Richmond next week that will actually be the go-home edition for Thunder. I don't know. I hope having Hogan and Flair here, knowing that that's the go-home edition, we get some more of them going back and forth. But I have a real bad feeling that instead we're not going to get that, and you're going to get Malenko and Benoit and Raven and Saturn in singles action or something.
I think my only real complaint as far as promos are I wish there was at least a little bit of recap of Nitro. I wish we could have at least got a little bit more of an understanding of how Raven and Saturn screwed over the tag champions. I mean, if belts are changing hands and both members, I won't say both members, obviously not Kidman and Ray, but if the other four guys that were involved in that match are going to be on the show, then give us a little bit of show us something. You can easily show us that. So that was one thing that I thought was a little bit of a blemish on the show as far as like being able to storytell. But like I said, other than that, I really had no huge qualms with any of the matches. I think the people that are getting pushed in the mid card are head scratchers at this point. I think Ming is too little too late, and Jerry Flynn should be a never ever. But both of those guys, it feels like they're taking steps forward as far as. I guess getting a little bit deeper in the card, we'll see. But, I think that this show overall ended on a note that makes me excited to watch Nitro and, once again, watch the next episode of Thunder. And really, that's what it's all about.
That is what it's all about. And that said, that is our show this week. So what it's all about is getting you guys to come back and listen to Thunder 58. So If you haven't yet subscribed, go do it. You can find us on any of your podcast listening devices. Leave us a review. Let us know how we've been doing on these 57 episodes. Go give us a follow on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, all of that. And, of course, you can always go to thundercraps.com for all of our previous episodes. And then go check out Thunder 58. It's April 8th, 1999, and it is the go-home edition for Spring Stampede. It doesn't get much hotter than that. For Kyle Hogan, I am Josh Kaiser, and we will see you next time on the Thundercraps podcast.
We are boons whiningly out of time. See ya.